Thank you so much for this introduction. So our panel is about powering Africa and what is the future of green energy investment. We have 5 panelists, and as our time is short, I propose that we start with the discussion. We have 4 themes that we want to discuss. The first one is about the potential. What type of energy, what type of technologies, what type of regions, where is most potential. Second one is specifically about technologies, including digital. What do we need to make this happen? And the third one is more about what we need to collaborate between the public sector, private sector, policymakers, etc. And the last one, how do we make it happen? I think this is a great debate. And let's kickstart on the first one. Where is the potential? I wanted to start with you, Kola, if I can, because when we spoke on the phone, you surprised me. I thought I was on the wrong panel, because you said it's about transition gas, you remember? And I wanted to understand why you said that, in fact. So where do you see the potential?
Yeah, thank you, and good morning, everyone. I think if we look at the dynamics of Africa, we cannot benchmark the continent at the same standards. We talk about industrial revolution in the world. The Western nations have had their first, second, third, and Africa has not had its first. So my view is Africa is blessed with a lot of natural resources. Gas is one of them. So if you look at Nigeria with 206 TCF of gas, the focus should be on its transition fuel. If you look at East Africa, from the Horn going down to Tanzania, Mozambique, there's a lot of gas finds. We cannot leave those behind and then double up our efforts on renewables alone. So the focus should be transition, renewable. It's got to be a proper energy mix that will be the sustaining balance for the continent.
Thank you. Osa, can I ask you if you agree with your neighbor?
Yes, I fully agree with Karim, but there are additional perspectives. So in Householders, we believe that Africa's energy future is going to be dominated by gas and renewables. Gas is very key. It's a transition fluid, and we have plenty of it. But renewables is going to be very compelling because it offers us opportunities to address energy gaps in areas that are underserved today, areas that are outside grids, and offers a very compelling proposition around portability, around reaching the further places in the hinterland that it will be difficult to get grids to. So I think, in summary, it's going to be gas and renewables.
Not or.
No, not all. The conversation is always about and, because the gap is so much, that it will be difficult to make choices.
Yeah, thank you. Marco, can you maybe give also your complimentary view, because I think your former employee was very much into the green transition, and now also I think in your existing functions you are a lot into investing in green. Do you agree with what your previous speaker said?
Our experience, Aqua Power is probably the largest energy transition company today, certainly a leading investor in Africa. We have invested more than $7 billion to date. 100% of that is renewables. So solar PV, concentrating solar power, wind. I'm not saying that gas is not part of the transition. In fact, it is, because countries like the countries in Africa that are emerging, they need all the energy that they can. If you look at the per capita demand today is a quarter or a fifth of what it is in Latin America, is 1/10 of what it is in Europe. But even simply to bring all of Africa to the level of, say, Egypt or Tunisia in terms of consumption requires to multiply by 3.5 times the installed capacity. So there's a lot to be done, and we believe that the cheapest, the fastest, the most secure is renewables. But certainly, when the economy is growing at the speed that is growing in Africa, you need the complement. So you need the gas-fired and potentially other sources.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a first agreement here amongst 3 speakers on the fact that it's complementary. Maybe, Vera, from your perspective, where do you see the potential? Because you are looking at how to finance all of this. is in which technologies or which type of, which solar or wind, etc. technologies, and which type of regions in Africa do you see most potential or most need for investment?
Well, thank you, and let me start maybe by congratulating and thanking Richard. Yes, of course, I recognize the Minister of Finance who is here to open, and the head of Badea as well, who are all together working on this. You know, I think the question is really a question about growth, and a question about how fast and how far Africa wants to grow. If Africa wants to grow today, our GDP is about $3.2 trillion, and we need to do a lot more and a lot faster. Then we need all the technologies we can harness. And that means essentially, and by the way, I think every time we have this conversation about the transition, Africa is already at a tipping point on the transition. 60% of Africa's energy is renewable because of hydro. We have a lot of the economies are using hydro. But if you look at Namibia today with hydrogen, if you look at Egypt itself with hydrogen, Kenya, geothermal. So I think that the diversity of the kinds of energy that we have on the continent are quite important. The importance, I think, is what you asked, is are we going to reach energy storage fast enough? That is really the issue, is, you know, if we can get battery energy storage capacities quickly, that will be the new technology that will really advance and accelerate, you know, entry into this new technological age. So that's the first one. The second one is 40% of Africa's energy today is lost in transmission. Huge innovation in India in terms of optimizing transmission lines. Huge innovation on the continent in terms of privatizing transmission. And I think, you know, if we can do those two things, getting the technology to optimize the lines, in countries like Nigeria, you would see huge access. But to industrialize, we need stable power, we need stable access, we need base load. And for that, I think the technology on hydrogen, you know, we need to improve on it, but in the meantime, gas is going to be, I think, the cheapest that we are going to be able to use.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you, Riyadh, give us the perspective from your function that you are now in?
Okay, I'm going to talk about carbon market, but I'll step back a little bit. Why it is important in Africa to ensure energy access and energy equality for everyone. As you know, 43% of Africans don't have access to electricity. What century are we in? This is very important for the continent that we finance, be it renewable, be it gas, be it others. All options are on the table. When we talk about renewable and carbon markets, which is very important topic to talk about, there are tools to finance that through IREX. We talked to Aqua Power about IREX, and it's a very important tool to finance different projects in Africa. So we need to look at it from a lens of carbon markets and how we can utilize that to scale projects and finance, because the major problem in Africa right now is financing. So this is how to utilize different tools. This is very important to look at, and how to be innovative in utilizing those.
Thank you very much. I think on the first part of this discussion, in fact, what I take away from you is that it's complementary. I mean, the fact that we have renewables and other existing energy sources. I think that you're also saying that we need to take into account the reality of the geography and where some of the different energies have most potential to produce, in fact. I think that you also have been saying that there's already a lot of renewable energy, in fact, and including also more traditional energy that exists. And the question is then more, in fact, how to make it happen, I think. That's a little bit a question that we will have in 2-3 rounds. But I think that all in all, I have the impression that we are very convinced, in fact, about the fact that there is a need to deliver more energy, in fact, to the continent. And that brings me maybe to continue to the second topic, more on the technologies. And I wanted maybe to hand over to you, Marco. What type of technologies are you investing in today?
Yeah. Technologies depend on the availability of the natural resource, mostly, particularly when you're talking about renewables. So we're now in Egypt developing particularly wind, but also solar PV. In fact, we just started production last month at our Komombo plant, 200 megawatt PV. and now we're progressing on 1.1 gigawatt wind. So you see that there is what is the resource that is mostly available. Morocco and South Africa, again, it's largely solar. But you see Central Africa, there's a lot of hydro resources. So I think that that will be a leading technology in those countries. And then, of course, if you are blessed with gas, that will be a complement. So I would say that at the end, you want something that is simple so that you can be fast. Because it's not really a trilemma, it's a quadrilemma. I add the speed component to it. So if you have the natural resources, then naturally, you're able to progress much faster.
Thank you very much. Kola, I wanted to, again, when we were preparing this session, in fact, and you said that there are even non-energy technologies like transport, other things that we need. Can you maybe explain what you meant by that?
I think one of the important investable areas is infrastructure. I think one of the important areas is infrastructure. Decaying infrastructure, if you look at a country like Nigeria, in the midstream sector, yes. I think the biggest missing middle, if you look at a big economy like Nigeria, is infrastructure. So midstream infrastructure shortages, old above ground infrastructure. So availability of capital to build out pipeline network for gas distribution is huge. Another big area we're investing in today is gas processing. We're just positioning 150 million scuffs of gas processing facility into the distribution market to help fuel industrial growth. We have 3.5 TCF of gas, but if you could connect right infrastructure in the midstream, processing, you could then deliver those to the market.
Thank you. Osa, if I can turn to you, I think that you are also very much into the grid technology, that you believe that's very important. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Can you maybe tell us why?
Yeah, I think we need to kind of look at it from a fundamental basis. So where are we today in Africa? So essentially, if you look at sub-Saharan Africa in particular, numbers vary, but I think there's consensus that more than 50% of the population don't have access to energy. That's over 600 million people. So we see that the journey that Africa is on is a journey from energy deficiency to energy sufficiency. And to get a future of energy sufficiency, it will require a combination of sources, both traditional like hydrocarbons, traditional renewables, as I call it, like solar, like hydro, and emerging renewables like solar, geothermal, and the others. So, and whilst some are more available in some regions, like geothermal, Eastern Africa is quite big on that. Solar seems to be the most prevalent and the most pervasive, and hence potentially has the most catalytic effect on that. So when we then look at it from the perspectives of technology, I think the technologies that will enable solar will be key. So it's the whole value chain. So it's from panels. There's lots of advancements, but more needs to be done to make it more affordable. There's technologies for inverters, technologies for storage. And then importantly, beyond solar itself, because the solution for Africa has to be a tops-down and a bottoms-up. Tops-down with traditional sources, bottoms-up with solar, distributed solar. So mini-grids and the technologies around mini-grids will be key. And then lastly, around digital, to improve collection, distribution efficiencies, to replace the legacy analog systems. These are key technologies that are going to be key to unlock solar to scale to the level that it will make true meaningful impact on the energy landscape.
And are people currently investing in all of these technologies, or is there like missing parts?
I think there is a private sector led approach. I think the coherence is what is not fully in place yet. So there's a lot of pieces. People are kind of following the opportunity, but how it will work as an ecosystem, both by government and the key players, is a piece that needs to happen.
Okay.
That would then channel and that would then direct the technology in a more meaningful way.
And Rian, what about platforms, that enable, in fact, people to work together?
Yeah, I'll bring a little bit of a different twist over here, an angle, which is the carbon markets. And I will talk about technology in two buckets. The first one, which is removal technologies, which is very important, removing CO2 from the atmosphere. If I were to mention direct air capture. Why is that going to be very popular in Africa? Because it's massive fans where the air passes through, sequester the CO2 underneath the ground. It needs intensive energy, and it comes from renewable energy. It comes from solar. Africa has got this almost 60% best projects could be in Africa when it comes to solar. So a lot of a huge opportunity, and it could be financed by carbon credit offset. I would say biochar is for farmers, so it touches upon people's lives as the black carbon. It enhances, it sequesters CO2 from the atmosphere. It enhances the quality of the soil and the yield of the crops. So it touches upon communities, and that is also very expensive technology that is financed by carbon credits. I'll give you BECS. I can give you a lot of negative cement. That is a very expensive technology that could be also handled in the African continent. So a lot of technologies when it comes to carbon credits and carbon markets. On digitization, and this is a problem related to the carbon market themselves, is how you can calculate the real climate impact. I don't know if some have read the integrity issues of the carbon market. I think with AI, with remote sensoring, with the satellite imaging, you can calculate with all of these technologies the real impact on the climate, and hence enable the investors to come and put their money in these projects, help the buyers to buy and have offtake agreements with debottlenecks the carbon market. So it's very important for the continent to debottleneck a lot of things and get financing, and all of that, all of these expensive technologies could be scaled in Africa because of the potential of renewable energy and so on and so forth.
And Rian, what do you say? Because some people say the importance is that people have energy, whether it's with carbon or without carbon. What is a little bit your view? Because Africa, for the moment, is not generating, it's not one of the biggest emissions of carbon in the world. Might people say it's too early to do that, or how do you see that?
I would say my opinion as an African, I'm Egyptian, so I'm going to talk here in the hat of not a Saudi company, but as an Egyptian. Energy access in Africa is key to economic progress and growth. Africans need to be enabled to use whatever resources they have to grow. This is key. Africa's got abundance, so 20% of the population comes from Africa, and we've seen in previous panels, the majority of Africans are average age of 19. It was the first panel, which is amazing. As a continent that is going to grow and is going to need more energy as it grows, as it urbanizes, this is another thing that we need to take into account. So 20% of the population, 4% of the global emissions, and lack of financing. Each and every country has got its own rating. So how to accelerate the growth in the continent? Like what Vera said, the story is a story of growth. How do we enable the continent without penalizing the continent of using its own resources to grow? So if you are telling them not to use gas, can you help them with renewables? Can you help them with other sources? Can you help in financing? It goes hand in hand.
Vera, can I hand over to you? Because you mentioned a lot the fact, how can we finance this, and whether some technologies, are they more bankable than others? And how do you see some technologies that we have not mentioned that we should be investing in?
No, thank you. Thank you very much. And I just want to come to something. I think sometimes when we have the conversation with Africa, we keep sort of asking the question, is it gas, is it not gas? And we spend too much time talking about that. Okay. Again, as Riham said, Africa is only 4% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And, there's many, many more countries that are sort of still using coal. I think on the continent, we're totally out of coal today. That is the big conversation. It's not so much about whether Africa should use its gas. The International Energy Agency says that until at least 2040, we're going to still need that mix in our energy supply. Your question is the right one, is how do we finance the energy that we need today? I think starting with what Riyam was talking about, carbon markets, and making carbon markets effective is because, as we heard from Minister Al-Jadan, fiscal budgets are stretched, whether it's in the advanced economies or whether it's in the developing economies. So we do need to find new ways and new sources of financing. One of those is carbon markets. In the advanced world, $900 billion already of carbon markets trade is happening. In the developing world, we're only 90 billion. Countries need to be able to develop their carbon markets so they can use some of those resources to invest in renewable energy. Another area where there is, I think, enough resources that we are not using well enough is in just asset recycling. Many of our countries already have assets on the ground that are stable, and I think Harris Holding is a good example. You can resell. In Africa, governments are still managing a lot of these utilities. You can sell it to the private sector. That will raise money for governments to be able to do that first mile project development, which is the most difficult part of the de-risking. The other thing that's happening now is that we have enough de-risking, enough credit enhancement tools. I think we heard Bayogunlesi say, I'm investing across the world, I need similar returns. You can get similar and better returns if we can de-risk. And to de-risk that, you need a lot of local currency, local development work that happens. And then, of course, capital markets development, which the Liquidity and Sustainability Facility is doing. How can we provide cheap, affordable, long-term capital? I think that is the difficult part on the continent, is energy plans of 15, 20 years. We need that kind of capital to be able to invest on the continent. And I think work with blending the financing is going to deliver for us what we need.
Thank you. I think it boils back, in fact, on how we make this investment attractive and how we attract that capital. But what about the public-private collaboration, Kola? We spoke about that a little bit on the phone, and you said, I can speak about that. Can you maybe tell us more?
The reality of Africa's growth is very simple. Public sector alone cannot deliver adequate infrastructure to sustain growth on the continent. Private sector participation is key, and that is what delivers value. Unlocking the financial support services to make that happen is very important, but the critical elephant in the room is private sector participation, so PPPs, concessions, and stuff like that. That's what changes the dial. So I'll give you an example. Mobility and movement on the continent, airports needed. But could governments deliver valued airport services compared to international standards? No. So global standards, if we wanted to put in practice, private sector needs to come into play. Talk about goods and services, railway network needs to be built on the continent. Could government fund that alone? No. Private sector needs to participate in that. The other key driver is, if you look at utilization of natural resources on the continent, I'll go back to gas again, which is huge on the continent. The West African gas pipeline that Nigeria is looking at going through West African countries, through to Morocco, then into Spain, that's a huge development mode. Industrial growth in those West African countries all the way through Morocco into Europe. Then you're looking at the northern line as well, going through northern Nigeria, through the Sahel, Algeria, crossing into Italy. Just imagine the growth that's going to be pushed onto these countries in developing their industrial divide by utilizing these natural resources. Then connecting Eastern Africa, doing the same thing, Tanzania, connecting to Mozambique. Those types of development only happens with serious private sector investors coming hand to hand with government in delivering these valued goals to making sure Africa develops. Thank you.
Thank you for your passionate plea for this investment and in private-public. We need to start getting to the conclusion, in fact, and if I might ask all of our 5 speakers just to give me one wish, something that could help this energy transition, whatever energy it is, and that could maybe overcome one of the barriers. What is your one wish that you would have?
Yeah, well, by the way, you talk about energy, but also in Africa is about water. and we see it increasingly. And I think I would like to take the example of another developing country, that is Uzbekistan. So what I observed there is that we really achieved the speed through leadership with a clear vision, dialogue with investors, and then quick decisions to make things happen. And that is a catalyst for investors. Then we can come in, and the PPP model, I think, is very useful in these countries, because basically you're bringing the whole financing package, what we're trying to do as an enabler of this. So we come with the best solution, let me say. We achieve the lowest cost of power, the lowest cost of water in the world. So what we bring is really this dialogue then on our side with the development finance institution, and what we want to do is to go beyond and talk to philanthropy to bring more concessional financing. By far, getting the lowest cost of debt is the biggest enabler for infrastructure in the country.
Thank you. Vision and depth, you had several wishes, but Riyadh, please.
Okay, I will talk about carbon market. We talked about private sector. Carbon markets about private sector enabling energy transition and helping and reducing emissions generally and removing CO2 from the atmosphere. I think one of the biggest issues that the market is facing right now is integrity questions. And without technology, without standardization between different standard setters, without the United Nations and Article 6 coming with standardization, that would not enable to de-risk projects and enable finance in these projects that are very important, not only to countries and removing CO2 or the atmosphere, but to communities. And this is something we should not forget about. The carbon credit offset, each credit has got a story behind it and has got a community and co-benefits behind it. So this is very important.
Thank you very much. A quick wish, please, because I'm...
Yes, I think for me it's a broader understanding that the energy transition is not the same for everywhere in the world. It will be different. For Africa, transiting from a current system that is predominantly fueled by petroleum liquids to a future that is fueled by gases and renewables is already a green transition.
Global capital looking for returns. You have a continent with very young people that's waiting to receive it.
Vera?
I think clearly we are here in Riyadh. We want a lot more Gulf investment. More importantly, I think it's technology. We need technology sharing that will be able to allow us to, I think, expand and break through on many of the discoveries that we have. And it is a joint, again, the planet is ours together to save or destroy. And I think one improvement in one place does not do it for all. We have to work together, and global capital can help us transition faster.
Thank you very much. I liked a lot, by the way, these 5 wishes, because in fact, I always say that you need to link the strategy, the vision, and that's what you said, in fact. I mean, we need to align the people around the vision for the continent, for this energy development, transition, etc. The second one that you also said is linked to innovation, technology, and the third one, which is linked to the people, in fact, and how we ensure that we have everybody, in fact, that wants to contribute. What I liked a lot in the panel is that you had something to offer. It's a positive, even if you know that there are problems. What I felt is that let's do it. We have all the pieces of the puzzle. We need to put them together, where some of them are missing, especially the money part, I think, that you were mentioning. That's one of the biggest pieces. So I wanted to thank you a lot. It was really great to have you here. And thank you also to the audience for listening to us. Thank you.
Ignacio and your panel, thank you very much. If I can direct you this way.